Well, hi, and welcome to Pastor's Positive Mental Health Institute. Yet again, I am Kirk. I'm so glad that you're with us. If you like this, I just encourage you to subscribe. And also, if you would share this with others, give a 5-star rating on the podcast, whatever it does to get the message out. I think we do great work here. I'm trying to always help pastors and those in ministry, full-time ministry, and even part-time ministry, those who have put their heart out there to serve the Lord, that they would have tools and also support to be able to accomplish their jobs that they have been called to do. So we have pastors and church leaders and church workers, all of that together. We all come from the same cloth. And so today you'll see yet again, not like the cloth, clergy cloth. I didn't mean it like that, but you could take it that way. So you see, I have another guest with me, and it's Kristina Parker. And so I'm not going to tell you a lot about her because I'm going to let her tell you about her because she knows herself better than I know her. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so anyway, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. The contact information website is in the comment section below in the description of the show. So without delaying any longer, welcome, Kristina. Thanks for joining me today.
Hello, Kirk. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So what led you to be in the ministry?
Um, I had a bit of a rocky childhood and some things kind of hit the fan with my dad. My mom had passed away when I was young, and so my dad was my caregiver. And I had big aspirations. I wanted to go be a lawyer and be in politics and all sorts of stuff. And um, it was in the middle of the Obama-McCain campaign. I don't know if you remember that race, but it was the
Yeah, I'm
first
not
one
old.
that I think I was like aware of as, as a human. As a child, you kind of just like it just exists, but it was the first one I was really paying attention to. And I noticed a number of instances on both camps. This isn't speaking like politically to one side or the other, but on both camps, how intimate and personal the other side got. And it wasn't Obama's campaign coming for McCain or McCain's campaign coming for Obama. It was like just the Republicans coming for Obama or the Democrats going for McCain in such a personal way, digging up things from their childhood and all sorts of stuff. And I really struggled with that because I was grappling with this idea of if I move into this public sphere, will all of these things that have happened in my childhood that were going on because people were ill-equipped or people didn't like they were doing the best they could, but they didn't have what they needed, and like to be exposed to everybody, even if I was to do just like a local campaign, like how much of that was going to get dug up, and it didn't feel like it was all my hurt to just put on display. So I was really struggling with that as a teenager. I was about 16 years old, 15 or 16. And I was sitting in church one day, and it was our Advent worship nights. We had worship on Wednesday nights throughout Advent season. And I remember praying and saying, okay, I had a plan. I had received a little bit of early communication from Reed College in Portland, and I was kind of getting excited about maybe looking that way and pursuing those dreams. And I was really struggling with this. And so I was like, okay, God, if you don't want me to make changes from the top down, what do you want me to do? And very clearly, I had this drive like, well, what if you did it from the bottom up? What if you worked here? What if you helped change the way people thought about the world and God and me, God, from here on out? And so I just walked to the back of the church to my DCE. He was like my youth pastor, kind of. And I walked back and I said, hey, what do you, and he knew about all of my passions and stuff like that. And he said, hey, or I said to him, hey, what do you think about me becoming a DCE? And he burst into tears and he gave me a really big hug and he said, I wouldn't want anything else for you. And that wasn't our relationship. We weren't like we were close, but not like that. And I walked back to my seat and I sat and I thought about it, and it just settled in me well. And after that, I no longer was communicating with Reed or any of the universities in the Oregon area. Except for Concordia Portland, I put my name in the little like I'd like more information box, and I never looked back.
Awesome. So what's interesting is you're tapping into something in my work that I've done that pastors look at this as a sacred calling. It's something that they almost heard directly from the Lord. And so I want to encourage people that anyone who is involved in any type of ministry, especially full-time ministry, that has to be the genesis of what happens, because you can't just say, oh, it's a good idea, let me try this for a while, because as many of us know, that just idea won't sustain you through the trials and the tribulations of ministry. So it's great when we can look back to that. It's kind of like us looking back to our baptism, right? And going, okay, this is what God said about me. We can look back to those moments. This is what God clearly revealed to me, and that gives us strength to carry on. For those who are listening that may not be in the context of the LCMS Church, a DCE is a Director of Christian Education. Is that correct?
It is,
Okay.
yeah.
So that kind of tells you what your role is in the church, but I want you to explain kind of what you do. You're a director of Christian education, and what church you're at, and tell us about the church as well.
So I serve here in Southeast Idaho in Pocatello at Grace Lutheran Church as the Director of Connecting Ministries. DCEs, Directors of Christian Education, kind of get to differentiate and specialize in different ministries. And some churches, you're kind of spread throughout all generations and kind of working with lots of people. Our church is blessed to have a team. And so I work with 2 other DCEs and 1 pastor right now, but we've at other times had another DCE on staff and another pastor on staff and all sorts of stuff. But my job is it's really wide right now. I oversee a lot of our children's ministry programs, including our education hour. I partner with our other DCE, Ryan, who's our director of family, youth and family, and I oversee VBS and children's church, including, and that kind of is it's programming and theology and training of leaders. And then I also get to work with adults. So I teach a class throughout the year and lead some Bible studies, but I also get to help train and our Bible study facilitators and leaders. And then I also get to work with our new members and our guests in helping them feel comfortable and safe in our environment and getting to know our congregation and connecting them in as best we can. And then I also work with our media ministries. I help produce a piece of our podcast. I send it to our tech guy and he puts it on, and our live streaming and all of the tech that goes into that, our marketing and whatnot. I partner with a number of people on. And then we also have a school, so I get to teach one of our Christian studies classes in our middle school.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, because I know Kristina, that's just a little bit of what she does. She's got her hands a little bit. She's kind of the go-to person if there's a technical problem. Does a lot with the presentation for Sunday morning services, and make sure that team is staffed and ready to go. And so again, it's one of those things as we look at ministry is we can kind of say, well, I do this and I do that. But the reality, if we were really to look at the scope and take account for everything that we did, the list would be really long, and everyone would be like, you do that much? You're like, yeah, these things happen because I plugged that gap right there, or I filled that hole right there. So, but main thing that you do is connection ministry. So getting people connected, getting, small groups, you're in charge of that. Is that correct?
I am, yeah.
And children's ministry, very important. And so, and then teaching the middle schoolers is just awesome too. And so that's great. So let me ask you this question. How do you, in all the things that you do, which you do a lot, how do you rely on the members of your church?
I have to. Because so many of my pieces of ministry are, they just span out so greatly. I can't be in 12 places at once on a Sunday morning. So I spend quite a bit of my energy, especially in the summer months, recruiting and training and lifting up our volunteers. I work with, I think one time I did a tally, but it was pre-2020 and I no longer keep tallies like this, but it was like 75 volunteers like regularly. And so just to keep them, up to date on what we're doing in the know, but also giving them as much equipment and upliftment as I possibly can. So constantly. And I don't think there's a ministry that I touch that doesn't involve other people. I don't think that I could do it by myself. I would I would drop all of the spinning plates, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So when you have children's ministry classes that need to be filled on a Sunday morning, you're relying on them to show up. You're relying for people to run the media during services. During vacation Bible school, you're relying on volunteers to come and do what they volunteered to do. And so, again, in a church to your scale, you find that there is a greater reliance upon volunteers because there's so many spinning plates and aspects to the ministry that you can't do it. Pastors in smaller churches, I mean, even my church in its scale, I can't do it all. And so I rely on other people to do things because I can't run video for the songs and the service while I'm leading it. And so all these things that come into play are like I get to leave on vacation or something. I have someone who can run Bible study and facilitate it. Just all these things. And so really we rely on church members. And so part of our job is how do we find those church members and keep them in a healthy place? Which sounds selfish because if they're in a healthy place, then that helps me as a leader be in a healthy place. But it's really what the church is supposed to do. It's build one another up in love. And so that's what we're helping one another do our part. So can you tell me about a time when you have felt built up in ministry?
Yeah. Real quick though, I couldn't agree more. There's a study that our senior pastor just pointed out recently that more people feel connected to their faith when they're serving in ministry in some way. And that doesn't mean that they have to be professional church workers. So that actually goes right along with that study of being able to like take ownership.
Well, I'm
of
going
your
to have to bug him and tell him to share it with me.
yeah. I'll see if I can find it and I'll forward it to you.
That'd be great. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So to go back to your question, there every year we have it actually wasn't in place until a couple years back, but I've been here for about 10 years. And now every year we have 2 or 3 elders and 1 person from executive council conduct a review of our staff. We never really had like consistent formal reviews. Every once in a while, probably every 2 or 3 years, we would go through one, but now it's pretty consistent and the elders have really taken charge of that. And they asked me some of the most thoughtful questions, and it was so funny. They, when we were like scheduling it, they said, hey, it should take about 15 minutes the first time. And I looked at the questions and I said, I could answer the first one in 45 minutes. I don't think it's going to take 15 minutes. Yeah. And I kind of warned them, but my coworker had done his, and his also took an hour and a half, and they didn't expect it. And so they had scheduled this time with me and were like, hey, Ryan's took longer. This might take longer with you. And I was like, yeah, it might. And they listened. And that was, it was really encouraging that they were curious about my experience, serving the people of grace. And then also by the end of it, they were so excited to continue to hear about my experience and be involved in it and encourage me in ways that they got to see where I was struggling, and they have continued to follow up with me. And then when my yearly review comes around now, I'm more excited for it too. I was a little like, I don't know how this is going to go, because as you know, governing bodies go, sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking. And this past year, when I was sharing with them some of my highlights from the year and the things that I'm really excited about, but also things that I was feeling sorrow about or feeling a gap in, they really stepped into. And now every Sunday consistently, that group of people checks in with me and says, is there anything that we can do to make like your reach go further? And that is it just really honors the ministry that I feel like I've been called to, but it also makes me feel seen by them, and they're the people that I'm here to serve, which it just is, it's so mutual and beautiful.
Yeah, and you mentioned something, a couple things that I'd like to highlight. First of all, the vulnerability that it takes to go into a review, because as those of us who are in the ministry, we always tend to look at our insufficiencies and our failures. And I don't know about you, but I rarely feel like I've done the best. I always feel like, oh, I could have done this better, or I wish it would have done better. And sometimes my expectations are off and there's all that. But so to be vulnerable, to go, yeah, I'm going into this knowing that I'm serving from the heart. But then also to see that people care for your heart. And there's a relationship, what you tapped on, which is really important. There's a relationship that then was garnered because of this review that now has had lasting effects to where you feel supported in ministry and you feel encouraged, and they're not afraid, they're not looking to you to do everything. They're looking to say, how can I help you accomplish what God has called you to do? So I like that. That's just a great example of, again, how we're working together with the same goal, and that is to help people grow in this beautiful faith that we have in Jesus Christ, and grow together in love. So that's good. Reviews are tough. I always want reviews as a boss. I've done in different areas besides just senior pastor. I always want reviews to be positive, and I want it to be a conversation. Within one company I worked with, we could never talk about weaknesses. It was always areas of opportunity, which always made me laugh. But what we're saying is, yeah, I'm deficient somewhere and I need help. But knowing that for one another is really important. So that's a great. I appreciate you sharing that. I think that'll be beneficial to a lot of people who listen to this. So, what have you found to maybe be the most challenging part of ministry?
Ugh, man, I feel like the elder brother complex of long term, not all long term, but there's like this idea in churches that this is the way we've always done it, and if you're changing it, you're moving our cheese, or for a nice old leadership, you know. But there's just this, like, every once in a while. I don't stumble on it too much. I feel like our culture is pretty good about propelling positive change at our congregation right now. But every once in a while, you'll kind of stumble on someone who's just frustrated, or gets really tied up in the weeds of things, and forgets that they're interacting with people, and that hurts. I think sometimes, like, because I do have high expectations for myself, and I do like to produce quality work quickly. It's just who I am. That sometimes when I can't show up, or I can't do something, or I'm incapable of something, or I miss something because I'm a human being, it's not seen as I should check in with Kristina, or I should ask a follow-up question here. Maybe there's a miscommunication. It's like and it could just be my perception too, and my own sensitivity, but sometimes I feel like someone might perceive me as like nefarious or something, and I'm like, that's obviously not true. Like, I'm here, I love Jesus, I'm serving this place, I'm serving you. Please see my heart in this. And that it gets just really tricky. And most of the time people are gracious enough that you can step into that very quickly and say, I'm so sorry, I did not intend to misunderstand our agreement, or whatever it is. But that doesn't always happen. And for me, it hurts the most when I see it between two people at the church. There's just a miscommunication between volunteers or whomever. And that's really hard, because I see both of their hearts, and I see, we're all working towards the same goal. And there's just this, like, well, we've always done it this way kind of thing. And or someone doesn't know that so-and-so is going through something, and they had to choose to set that thing down for a minute. And as a church, I think we can be gracious towards that. And every once in a while, there's just this moment. And at least in my ministry, I think about those moments all the time, even though that it was just one moment. When I walk in on Sunday morning, I'm very aware of when that moment happened and how to avoid that moment again, or make it succeed better the next time. And then I'm focusing a lot on some of that negativity that I don't know is super helpful.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that. And what I really appreciate about what you're saying is, and I'm gonna sound like an old person for a moment, but some of it's generational. The world that you have grown up in, and those that you serve that are younger than you, is a world that is constantly changing. And so for some of us who remember who know how to dial a rotary phone, it's one of those things where everything seems so rapidly changing. And unless you get kind of used to that culture of change, it's hard to accept it. And especially when it comes to church, which may be the one stability or the stable thing that hasn't changed in however many years. Yet the heart of God is to reach each generation and where they're at. Jesus came to us where we're at. And so sometimes we need people like you that have different visions and different ideas. And we need to have the grace to let you try stuff, even if it might not work. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate when I was called as the pastor here and during the installation process was that the church said they agreed to take the best construction on everything. And so that's hard and you never want to remind people, hey, are we thinking evil of somebody here? Or,
Yeah.
we automatically assume what the intent of their heart is. And that is always a negative construction on their character. And so you start attacking the person again, like you said, we all have the same goal. And so everyone's kind of wanting to do a good job. And when they fail or they have a misunderstanding and the other person says, well, you're doing this because of this, then all of a sudden you're attacking my character instead of
Right.
saying, hey, yeah, maybe I whiffed on this. It's okay. Help me understand. So communication in the church, obviously, is huge. And especially when you work with volunteers like you do, with life, that happens, and they don't realize sometimes that we have life that happens. And so that's good. And I think that's a great word for anybody in ministry to go, let's not assume the intents of somebody's heart. Let's go, wait a second, I know they probably love the Lord and they probably aren't doing this, like you said, with a nefarious intent. And especially for us in ministry, when we do want to change, people don't realize how much we've prayed over it, labored over it, and thought over it. And then when we get that immediate kickback and they treat us like we're just, flippantly doing whatever, you're like, yeah, no, actually, I've thought about this quite a bit.
Yeah.
Again, people don't like change, but doesn't matter. It's happening, right?
It is happening. And, sometimes it's even something little, like it just didn't work that way this one time,
Mhm.
and it's not supposed to be a blip on your Sunday. I wasn't trying to ruin what
Right.
was going on here. It just happened. Someone was sick, something didn't show up. I had to put this person here and they were as prepared as they could be.
Yeah,
And
and again, we
tricky.
lose sight of the big picture, right? We're here to
Yeah.
worship God. We're here to focus on Jesus. But if the enemy can get us sidetracked with the littlest things, like you said, that really, at the end of the day, aren't that big of a deal. In the moment, we find them extremely big. But yeah, anyway. Well, if we weren't people, it'd be a lot easier.
My dad worked at the district office for a while when I was young, and back in the day, Pastor Bill Warren's wife Carol worked there too, and she I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but she's in heaven now,
Okay.
and dancing with angels. But she used to say ministry would be really easy if it wasn't for the people,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
that my dad said that to me several times when I started ministry. And I was like, I like these people, Dad. What are you talking about? And now I've been here for a minute and I'm like, you know what? It's like the positive side and the hard side. It's both.
Yeah, the problem is when we say it would be better without people, we're including ourselves in that. So,
100%. I know. I'm like, it would be easy if I wasn't in my own way.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, but that's part of it. We keep going back to what you originally told us because there was a moment in your life where God spoke clearly to you. And despite our inadequacies and our inabilities, he still desires to use us. And this is the way he does it. So we trust him for it. So tell me how someone in your church has made you smile in the last 2 weeks.
I've actually had a lot of really wonderful things that have happened in the last 2 weeks since the start of the year. We had a gap in our teaching ministry. So our new teacher, Marley, stepped in and was called to serve in our middle school and a little bit in our high school as well. But her mom and her dad actually worked at Grace so many years ago, 20 years ago. and had been called elsewhere and have moved a few times since. And she'd served in our student teaching here. And so that was kind of like a little fun reunion, but she didn't really remember a ton of people because she was so little when she moved away. But many people remembered her parents really fondly. And her first day of teaching, I was up kind of in our offices, and I saw one of our church members and the wife of one of the co-teachers of her dad, who had worked in our school, show up with flowers for her. And I didn't say anything. I just kind of watched it happen, saw her check in, and asked if she could go take them to her. And it just brought so much joy because I remember how scared I was and how nervous I was to start ministry. I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to impact people well and honor the call. And it felt very serious and intense and like, this is it. And very pinnacle moment, and I've been doing my best to encourage her. She's actually staying with Charles and myself for a time as she gets her feet settled. But I saw that happen, and it brought so much love to this congregation, but also that family that is doing exactly what I remember people did for me. People were so kind to me when I showed up and invited me into their homes to have dinner and all of that. And I remember that newness and how their kindness in those moments was everything that held me grounded and didn't, make me fly off into the ethers or something like that. Yeah. And so there was like that little fond memory, but also I really love Marley. I love the work that she started to do. She's a wonderful human. And to see her be loved too just brought me so much joy. I like that. I don't always need the attention, but I like it when the church members are loving each other well. It makes me so happy.
Well, that's great that you mentioned that, because one of the things that we find that builds up our positive mental health in the ministry is when we see people engaging in active Christian work and at Christian character. And this is one way that they're building somebody else up, and you get to observe that. And so again, it's important for us to spend the time looking for those moments, because often we will get so caught up in like before this interview, like I was just caught up in some work, which is great. We need to do the work. We get caught up in the work. We get caught up in the problems that happen in the ministry, those little nuisances that happen between people, and we cannot pull back and look above that and see God is actually working in and through people. And that's why we do what we do, because we want to make a difference, like you said, again, at the beginning. And so I'm glad you brought that as an example. And I would encourage anybody who's listening or watching this, something that it's important that we do, that we pause and we take and we look for. It's what I do in my workshops and my seminars, is I encourage and give people the tools of how to look for these things, because otherwise we won't. And it's kind of like when you're growing up as a kid and you haven't seen your aunt for 2 years and she goes, "Oh, look how much you've grown." And we're like, "I haven't grown at all." Well, it's because we haven't looked at measurements and we haven't been able to observe it. And so it's important for us to pause and be refreshed by the Holy Spirit by doing that and going, "Oh, this made my day. Everything else, it's not as big of a deal as I thought it was. This is what it's all about." So that's awesome. Last question for you. What is the desire for your people at the church?
Man, I have so many. Just general goodness and grace, that they feel so close to God. That I had a professor at Concordia talk about how sometimes people like ooze God's grace because they just are so affected by it themselves. And I just really wish that our congregation, that but also all Christians, get to feel that so close to God that they can't help but ooze that grace out of their system. It's not just like, oh, I know I'm loved, therefore I'm gonna act in love, but it's that I feel so loved that I can't help but love other people. And there's a little bit of a shift in thought there, and I can't cause it. I can't make that happen for any individual, but man, it's really cool when you get to see it. And I just wish it for everybody. I feel like there's a handful of people in my life, your wife included, as one of these people that I point to, that oozes God's grace and love to others. But there's only like a handful of people that I think consistently just have that spirit about them. And I don't know what it is. I wish that I would have that spirit too, I guess, but I don't know. I I don't know what I'm saying. I just really think that if there was something that I could like mark as like my true like lasting desires, that that would be the character of our congregation. Is that, man, when this guest showed up, they couldn't help but like feel and see like how much Jesus is coming out of these people.
No, that's great. I think you said it just fine, that you want people to know by experience the love of God and not just have some sort of obligation. And well, since I know I'm loved, I'm supposed to love, but no, I'm so greatly loved, I can't help but love. And it's not something that we're thinking about, right? We're just doing it because God has worked that into us. And so, yeah, no, that's great. That's again, it's one of those things that all of us in ministry really say kind of the same thing. What do you want for your congregation, the people that you serve? I want them to be in love with Jesus, and I want them to be assured of their salvation, and that would impact the way they live their lives in such a way that others would know that they're loved because of their presence in their life. So, again, it doesn't matter what denomination you're in, or whether you're a senior pastor, whether you're a professional church worker or a volunteer that serves. That's really the desire, is that Jesus would be exalted and that his love would permeate all that we do, and it would be a natural outflow of those connected to a holy God. So I really appreciate the work that you do for that. And when we keep that as the forefront, that kind of helps us actually filter what we do so that we're not so caught up in the minutia of tasks, because you have a lot of them. And you didn't even list. We'd still be here if you listed them all. We'd still be on that question. So anyway, well, Kristina, thank you so much. I appreciate all that you do. Appreciate your heart for the ministry, your engagement in the ministry, your passion for others. It really shines through in what you do. So thank you for doing that. Also, if you find this beneficial, again, as I asked before, please subscribe, please share this, please like it, all the things you do, whatever. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. So thanks again. Together we can help the church flourish.